Hello, my friend, and welcome to the study on this blustery autumn evening. If you've been coming to the study for a while, you know that I have a very old rough collie, and you might be able to hear him in the background, panting and walking around. In fact, he's 14 and a half years old. And that's him settling himself on the carpet under the desk of the study. It's one of the reasons I've been having a lot of trouble filming, because I have to be very gentle with him. He's old, he gets confused, and sometimes he forgets where he is, can't see as well as he used to, can't hear as well, and he just needs a little bit of support. He tends to walk around and wander around, pant or breathe, make all kinds of noises. So let's just be a little bit tolerant of that while I'm filming tonight for you. The blustery autumn blows over the downs here, through the woods and the forests, blowing the colored leaves off the trees and agitating the ones that are still green. All the different colors of the countryside, from the vibrant green of summer, are going into the golden reds and yellows of autumn, and soon everything will be asleep. It really makes this part of the countryside come alive with the ancient history that it saw 2,000 years ago and more. Oh, there are a lot of burial mounds, Iron Age hill forts, Bronze Age settlements, Roman villas, Roman walls, all kinds of remnants of days and empires and kingdoms and cultures long gone. So today we're going to dip into Roman-Briton a bit. We'll be looking at a lot of books and a map and a few of the things that I find ignite the imagination. Like this Roman helmet. This, in fact, is no ordinary Roman helmet, as you can see. There's a very young face of a young man with curly hair and a pointed hat with a griffin on the top. This helmet is called the Crosby Garrett helmet. It's a copper alloy made with zinc and tin, and is actually Roman cavalry helmet, but a special one. It dates from the 2nd or early 3rd century AD, and it was only found in May 2010 by metal detectorists. The place where it was found is near Romano-British farm settlement and between two Roman camps or forts. So we can perhaps assume that the owner was a local inhabitant on the farm, or perhaps a retired cavalry officer. But there's a number of things we know to be true about the cavalry and the Roman army and the forts in this area on the edge of the empire, with which we can draw together what might seem to be a very interesting story. The actual story behind it, we might never know. But all of these details that we'll find out certainly conjure up the imagination and a very interesting and perhaps mysterious story. The helmet was folded up and deliberately deposited in an artificial stone structure. It might have been very old by the time it was buried, and a lot of analyses have been done on the metal and the helmet itself when it was found and when it was restored. It is one of 3 helmets of its kind, with 2 parts found in Britain, the other being the Ribchester helmet and the Newstead helmet. Although its facial features, as you can see, this beautiful young face, is more the style of something in southern Europe. What this tells us is that not only the face, but the shape of the top of the cap, which is pointed and Phrygian or Thracian, might allude to the cavalry games in which some Trojans were depicted. This being the case, we can see how the Romano-Britons, or even the Romans that were here for hundreds of years, identified as Romans, and if not identified, at least took part in many facets of the culture, including knowing the history of the Roman Empire and its literature, its culture, its origins, its religions. This very ornate Roman cavalry helmet is most likely belonged to a cavalry auxiliary, and these cavalry auxiliaries have an interesting story behind them. Not only were they gleaned from the far reaches of the empire, but they were also among the highest paid of all the Roman soldiers. They had to pay for their own armor and equipment, as well as their horse, and all of their horses' needs out of their own salary. Many cavalry officers owned their equipment, whereas the milites, the foot soldiers, had to give it all back when they left the service. A lot of analysis has been done on this particular helmet. The visor was originally attached to the headpiece with a hinge. The iron hinge piece, or the pin, didn't survive, but its existence is known because there's powdery deposits of iron oxide around where it would have been. The helmet would have been held in place with a leather strap, and that would go around the wearer's neck and be attached to the helmet by decorated rivets on either side, just below the ear. On this helmet there are also wear marks, showing that it had been opened and closed. And also, they can tell that at some point this helmet had been repaired using a bronze sheet, which was riveted across two splits in the helmet. So we know that it has been well used, or was well used at the time. It is the decorated rivets, as well as the design of the eyes, the way they're pierced, that can give us a date of late 2nd or early 3rd century, as well as some of the metal. It's a fantastic piece of British history and conjures up all kinds of questions just by its design and existence. There's been speculation about the griffin that's on the point. Some scholars have suggested that the griffin was the companion of the goddess Nemesis, the goddess of fate, or even vengeance, sometimes seen as agents of death. The face and the headpiece are more Eastern in appearance. All kinds of suggestions have been made from Greek gods, or Perseus, Roman god Mithras, or even Jupiter, Dolichus. This Phrygian cap is one that was often used in the Hellenic world and taken over by the Romans to represent the Trojans in reenactments and demonstrations, which is possibly part of the pageantry around the cavalry tournaments and demonstrations for which this helmet was made. These tournaments were known by the Greek term of Hippika Gymnasia, or equestrian exercises, or more likely cavalry displays. These were military tournaments or mock battles, and took place particularly among cavalry units. They served as training exercises, especially for the elite equites or mounted soldiers, showcasing riding skills, combat techniques, and their ability to perform complex maneuvers on horseback. We also know that by the end of the 2nd century AD, these cavalry tactics that the Roman army was famous for had begun to change and develop into a more traditional cavalry role. Cavalry was taught how to fight from the saddle. This new cavalry tactic was part of the Hippika Gymnasia, in that the cavalry now learned how to fight from the saddle rather than simply carrying the soldiers very fast to one place or another. They used the specialized spathion, or longsword, and also spears, and learned flanking tactics. These Hippika Gymnasia were originally more private affairs, but soon they became more public and attracted onlookers. And enthusiasts would flock to these fields to watch the cavalry train and exhibit their elite horsemanship. By the 3rd century AD, these Hippika demonstrations became popular among all classes of Roman citizens who had access to local gymnasia and training fields. These displays would build camaraderie, demonstrate the prowess of individual riders, and ensure readiness for battle. However, they also had a public entertainment aspect, as they could be held in front of large crowds in arenas, often serving as displays of Roman military strength and discipline. In these mock battles, the participants often wore elaborately decorated armor and helmets. Some helmets from this period, like these with gilded faces, were highly ornamental and ceremonial, and they were used specifically for the pomp and grandeur of the event, rather than for actual combat. Though we do have accounts and archaeological evidence of the horse's armor and the armor of the cavalrymen being very shiny, very showy, and making lots of clinking noise, which probably went a long way to disturbing the enemy. Our Greek author, Arrian, writes in his Ars Tactica, "The horsemen enter the parade ground fully armed, and those of high rank or superior horsemanship wear gilded helmets of iron or bronze to draw the attention of the spectators. Unlike the helmets made for active service, these do not cover the head and cheeks only, but are made to fit all round the faces of the riders with apertures for the eyes. From the helmets hang yellow plumes, a matter of decor as much as utility. The horses move forward, and the slightest breeze adds to the beauty of these plumes. They carry oblong shields, a lighter type than those used in action, since both agility and smart turnout are the objects of the exercise, and they improve the appearance of their shields by embellishment. Instead of breastplates, the horsemen wear close-fitting Cimmerian tunics, embroidered with scarlet, red, or blue, and many colors. On their legs, they wear tight trousers, not loosely fitting like those of the Parthians and Armenians, and the horses have frontlets carefully made to measure, and also side armor. Many of these archaeological finds have been discovered throughout the Roman Empire, almost labeled as sporting equipment: shields, buckles, armor, helmets. The helmets are some of the more interesting bits, and were of both male and female types. They could portray the wearers as Greeks or Amazons. But if it were a Greek with this Phrygian cap, it's probably part, or was probably part of a reenactment of a scene or a famous battle. The riders in the Hippika Gymnasia were armed with javelins, but not real ones. Also, they had darts and swords to carry out these mock battles. Often they would ride in two teams, and display their prowess in horsemanship. Arrian tells us quite a bit about these Hippika Gymnasia and the order of the events and the kind of events that would have taken place. First, dividing into two teams, one side would attack and the others would defend. They would use their shields over their horses' backs like a giant testudo formation. Two of the defenders would stand in front of the team, acting as targets as the other side threw the dummy javelins at them. The attacking team were tested on their accuracy in their ability to hit these two defenders with the javelins, who in turn would attempt to thwart the attack with their shields. Occasionally, the other defenders would ride out and try to hit the passing attackers. In a second exercise, this cavalry would attempt to throw as many darts as far as they could at a gallop across the parade area in front of the viewing platform. There were also events where targets were struck with lances. In the final stage, skills were demonstrated that would eventually have been useful in combat, where the cavalry was given a task of chasing down an enemy to prevent him from regrouping, and given the task of leaping onto a running horse while wearing full armor. We know that Hadrian himself witnessed displays of these kind in North Africa. Events like the Hippika Gymnasia helped maintain the physical conditioning of the cavalry, both men and horses, and it honed the tactical skills needed for real warfare. The emphasis on display also helped reinforce the prestige of the Roman cavalry. We can see evidence of this in altar inscriptions dedicated to these games or related events, and these are a valuable source of information about the military practices and ceremonial traditions of Roman cavalry units, including those in Roman Britain. They could be dedicated to gods, emperors, or military leaders in thanks for victories, successful training, or even as part of religious or ritual observances connected to cavalry exercises. In Roman Britain, there are several notable altar inscriptions, namely in Cirencester in the south, and many along Hadrian's Wall and the Roman fort of Vindolanda, where the 20th Legion had its home. Not only from altar stones is there evidence of cavalry in Britain, but also the famous tablets of Vindolanda, the Roman fort, where many cavalry units were stationed. There are several examples of altars, all dedicated by Marcus Cocceius Firmus of the 20th Legion between 142 and 180 AD. Here we see a famous one, dedicated to Mars, Marti, Minerva, Minervae, the goddesses of the parade ground, Hercules, Epona, a Gallic or Celtic horse goddess, and Victory, and at the bottom Marcus Cocceius Firmus, centurion of the 2nd Legion Augusta, the one also known for garrisoning Caerleon in Wales. We can see the parts of these altars. The top features a bowl-shaped depression where offerings were given. This is called the focus. The bolsters on the corners and the sides are called pulvini. Sometimes they depict bunches of incense to signify the offerings. The top altogether is the capital, or the head of the altar. The inscribed surface is on the part called the die, and it sits on a large base, the lower section. The dedication of altars in the context of military exercises like the Hippika Gymnasia reveals the deep connection between the military, religion, and spectacle in Roman society, and also that it was prominent in Britain at the edges of the empire. These events weren't just about training for war, but also about reaffirming the bond between the soldiers and their gods, ensuring divine favor in future endeavors. The inscriptions could also serve a cultural role, reinforcing Roman identity in the provinces. The public display of these dedications, often in prominent locations like the parade grounds or fort headquarters, would have been visible to local populations and garrison soldiers alike, helping to project Roman authority and military power by underscoring Roman history and culture. The elite and colorful Roman cavalry was known for its exceptional skill, its endurance, and its prowess in wartime. Pliny the Elder wrote in AD 79 about the Sarmatians making excellent cavalry with their skills and horsemanship. We also learn about these Sarmatians from the Roman historian Cassius Dio, who writes of 5,500 Sarmatian hostages that were taken from their Hungarian homelands in AD 175. These were sent to Britain under Marcus Aurelius and stationed at Rupechester Fort, whence we have this beautiful helmet. The troops of the first grade, the legions, comprised 5,500 to 6,000 men. They were divided into cohorts, of which there were 10 in each legion. Thus, the cohort contained 600 men. Among the troops of the second grade, the auxilia, the cohorts were independent foot regiments, 500 to 1,000 strong, corresponding to the alae, which were the similar regiments of cavalry, 500 to 1,000 strong, generally posted on the frontiers of the empire in small forts of 4 to 8 acres each, holding one cohort. Auxiliaries were the backbone of the Roman cavalry. These Roman cavalry displays, colorful and entertaining, as well as skillful, remained a significant part of the culture in Europe even after the fall of the empire, as we can see in medieval jousting tournaments and the famous carousels of Versailles and Vienna. Thank you, my friend, for joining me into this trip into Roman Britain and the beautiful horses and countryside of the autumn. I hope you sleep well and you have a beautiful day. Be good to yourself, be kind to others, and be extraordinary.